Hey friends, welcome to Spiritual Psychic. I'm Sara Wiseman. Today I want to talk a little bit about looking at life as the long game. And I don't necessarily mean you have to have a long lifespan to have a great and interesting and meaningful life. Because a lot of us, we don't know. Some of us will have a long lifespan, some of us will have a short lifespan. It's hard to know, or actually we don't know. So it's not about length of time. It's really about how much soul growth you can pack into the time you have. Many of us understand that soul growth isn't going to happen to you in a church or from a spiritual teacher or a book or from being involved in a spiritual organization. Those are great support systems for your process in most cases, but the holy ground is not where you're going to learn the big lessons. You're going to learn the big soul lessons just right there in the trenches of your life with the things that truly matter to you the most, with your relationships, with your family, with your work, with your physical structure, with the societal changes that affect you or affect the people that you love. So this idea of turning to spiritual growth as a way to grow is probably not true. The way you achieve spiritual growth is from grappling with and coming to terms with the actual problems and the actual issues you have in your life. And instead of, most people, they get a problem, or we'll call it, well, a soul lesson, we'll call it a problem. We get a problem kind of repeatedly. We get these same problems coming in patterns over and over and over again until we finally sort of figure out the pattern. We clue into the repetitive nature of the problem that we're facing. It is in addiction groups and so forth, there's a lot of talk about self-responsibility. You're taking responsibility for your actions. And I want to mention that it's not just about actions in how we react or how we respond. It's actually also about the way we think about things, like taking responsibility for how we think about things. Sometimes we get so stuck in the thought loop. It's just like we're just on the hamster wheel of that thought over and over and over again. And really, that's not even reality. That's just our thought pattern. We get very stuck in the mind. And so part of the idea of soul growth is being able to let go of the thought patterns in our mind that are creating these problems for us over and over and over again, and sort of one by one taking these problematic patterns and sort of unlocking them, sort of becoming free from the issue. And especially because a lot of our problems, or most of our problems, are in relationship to other people, it can be kind of painful if we have to set boundaries with people, or we have to let go of old friendships or old family relationships, or maybe we have to get divorced or we have to move away. And it can be very painful with these relationships that we thought, these are the most important relationships in my life. These are the people I'm closest with. This is my family, my friend group, my work group, whatever it is for you. And sometimes that is where the pattern is the deepest, right? Because we're sort of supplied with our soul group when we enter into the world. And there it is. We come in and we're surrounded by our teachers, and our teachers have these forms of, oh, that's my mother, that's my father, that's my sibling, that's my partner, that's my kid, that's my grandkid, that's my best friend, that's my coworker. We're really rubbing shoulders with our biggest teachers every single day. And this is where these patterns start to come in, especially when we've known people for quite a while. I had the opportunity a little while ago to go to 80th birthday party for someone, and traveled there and knew a lot of the people there from quite a number of years. Knew a lot of people over time, so at least 30 years of knowing people, and a lot of the people there had known each other for 40 years or even possibly 50 years, or some of them, living in the same community surrounding each other their whole lives. And it was really interesting to see, and this was a community of, I would probably say, spiritual seekers for the most part. So they had dived into a lot of the spiritual information, especially coming up from the 1970s, which is really heady, rich information. Sort of meditation started and in the US, and other ideas began to percolate. And so people that had really taken their lives seriously and really wanted to create something different than the mainstream at that time, which was around, the 50s and then Vietnam, and just really wanting to create a different style of life and using the spiritual methods at the time in order to think about that and in order to explore that. So this was a group of primarily pretty big seekers. And what was interesting to me is that looking at people who've known each other a long time, who've been doing work for a long time together, not just several years, but decades, and then they've seen each other through, divorce, marriage, remarriage, family situations, illness, death, moving. I'm not listing things in order, but they've seen each other through the big stuff. And during that time, I'm sure that as this group of people, or some of these groups of people that knew each other quite well, interacted with each other over the years, I'm sure that every single one of them had deep issues with somebody in the group, right? Or somebody in this group had deep issues with a family member, or they had a deep challenge of health or work or money or whatever their deep challenge was. And it was just kind of interesting to see this very connected group that had been doing this work or doing similar work over a lifetime or over their adult lifetime, and to see how free they were, or how free many of them were, from a lot of the same thought patterns that are really, really pummeling us when we're in our younger years, in our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. There was this opportunity over the long game of spiritual work, spiritual attention, spiritual priority. There was a long game of actually being able to become free from a lot of the pattern thinking and a lot of the false thinking that probably plagued them in their younger years. Now, again, this group was a bit older than I am, but it gave me hope, if if we just stick with it, And we keep attending to spiritual practice, and we keep applying spiritual practice to the problems and issues in our lives. Eventually, we are able to break this pattern free. Eventually, we're able to wrestle the pattern out of our minds and step off the treadmill or the hamster wheel. It was really encouraging to me to see people who had been applying spirituality as their method of dealing with stuff, as opposed to, say, applying materialism or applying psychology or applying medication or applying addiction, like all the ways we can sort of attempt to get through our lives with coping mechanisms. And in general, applying spirituality to the soul lessons, the problems of life, seem to be working pretty well. Now, I'm sure most of the people in that group have had many dark nights of the soul, and by that I mean where you truly just really get stuck in duality and you realize, like, oh, I don't even have trust in the universe. You know, I feel so much despair. I have so much suffering. And yet there's something about coming back into community of people going through the same thing that is very encouraging. My hope is that this platform is reaching people that perhaps don't have access to community in their area, or don't feel they fit as much in community in their area. And, you know, I just have one view that comes from my experience in the world. I don't have a cult. I do have a training school, but that's like just very, you know, like only certain people like that. So I'm just trying to spread my understanding as best I can. And most of my understanding comes from channeling. That's where it comes from. And then from dealing with my own soul lessons, my own problems in my life, and attempting to apply what I learned from the channeling, what I learned from meditation, what I learned in sharing with others, to, like, okay, here's this issue. How do I apply my spiritual belief system to that scenario, and then connecting with the guides and saying, okay, here's what I think. What do you have to tell me? And their advice is usually better than what I have for myself. I'm going to read a little bit. Here's, again, the Gabriel Messages is on Amazon. I have a lot of books. I think there's 6 books of spiritual teachings. And then that is something that I'm really committed to, like, as the guides come. They don't come all the time, but as they come with channeled teachings, to bring those messages to people. And then the other books I have are just strict psychic development training. I'm really wanted to provide a way to have the techniques that I use be shared in a really clear way, so you could just pick up the book and be like, okay, I want to do this. How do I do it? And then there's how to do it. Okay, let me just read a little bit of this. The All of It. If you knew this moment were the last of this lifetime, you would look around yourself in awe of everything and everyone. You would not worry about what had been left undone or unaccomplished, though you might have regrets for relationships that were not resolved or intimacy that was not expressed. You might have regrets over not doing enough, perhaps, maybe. But for most of you, the feeling would be of awe, of appreciation, of a grand feeling of thankfulness for what you have experienced, the all of it, as it came sliding into your awareness as a complete feast of every experience, every understanding, every feeling. All of this would come rushing in even as you might feel yourself falling away into nothingness. You might also feel oneness, which would center and bloom in your heart as love. I really like that. This feels very comforting to me. Let's keep going. And this is a little bit more about the people that you meet. Karmic crossings. You will meet thousands of souls across this lifetime, and all of them are important. Every soul you meet has a soul lesson for you. Even the smallest encounter is predestined and agreed upon in the vast network of souls across all time. Every encounter is important. Every connection is a chance to evolve together. But some relationships are destined in a way that you will wonder at, for they have an intensity which may feel good or may feel bad, but cannot be denied. When the energy is there, not just romantic, but any kind of intensity, pay attention. The karma is showing itself in your feeling and in your intuition. Sense that yes, this is here now, and yes, it is important. And I think that's where I want to end this today, is sensing in your own life now where the intensity is, where the thing is that like, oh, this thing, and looking at that as a place that is a karmic lesson that has not yet been completed. So it's a soul lesson. You obviously haven't figured it out yet, because once you figure something out, it just disappears from your field. Whatever is bugging you the most, whatever is your biggest issue, whatever you are struggling with the most, that is where this karmic crossing is. That is where this lesson is being served to you on a silver platter. I personally kind of hate soul lessons because it's rough, but when you get through some of the things, and we've all mastered many soul lessons in our lives, right? So we don't have to do those. We don't have to go back to those anymore. Anyway, just kind of have some meandering about that today. You can go to the website. I have the $22 courses that are amazing. Nice way to dip your toes into spiritual and psychic development. For those of you who want to take the spiritual psychic training for the first time, it's available as self-study. And I'm doing this because in order to do the more advanced training with me, you need to have some of the skills and techniques. And so this is a way you can get those accomplished without waiting for registration every semester. Anyway, please go to the website, sarawiseman.com, and I will see you next time.